Burling is quick to respond with, "And you asked me a question before that. A quite unnecessary question too." Here we can see that he is clearly ruffled by the inspector's question. However, it's also important to note the assertiveness of both men. "It's my duty to ask questions," is the inspector's response, and again we can see that he focuses on duty and doing his job. We also see the morality theme emerging. The whole way throughout, the inspector acts as a moral compass for the play. Burling responds with, "Well, it's my duty to keep labour costs down." Here we can see again his self-serving interest. Note, however, Eric's response. "It isn't if you can't go and work somewhere else." Here we can see that Eric, unlike Burling, is open to change. He is sympathetic to the working classes. This aligns him with the younger generation, who are more susceptible to change. Both Eric and Sheila are viewed as much more progressive than the older generation of Burling and Mrs. Burling throughout the course of the play. Here we can see the inspector saying, "Quite so," agreeing with Eric. Burling responds to Eric, "Look, just you keep out of this. You hadn't even started in the works when this happened." So they went on strike. That didn't last long, of course. Note the imperative, emphasising how dismissive he is. Again, we can see the tension between the old and the younger generations. We can also see him putting down Eric, putting him in his place, emphasising the tense relationship through that imperative, "Just you keep out of this." Gerald aligns himself with Burling as a traditionalist when he responds with, "Not if it was just after the holidays. They'd be all broke if I know them." Here we can see that he is a shrewd character and there's a clear camaraderie between Gerald and Mr. Burling. "Right, Gerald, they mostly were, and so was the strike after a week or two. Pitiful affair." Here we can see his condescending manner and how proud and pleased he is with himself. "Well, we let them all come back, at the old rates. Except the 4 or 5 ringleaders who'd started the trouble. I went down myself and told them to clear out, and this girl Eva Smith was one of them. She'd had a lot to say, far too much, so she had to go." Here we can see how pleased he is yet again with himself. Both Burling and Gerald are both capitalists. Gerald responds with, "You couldn't have done anything else," and we can see here that he clearly sides with Burling, linking him to the older generation values as opposed to the younger, despite the fact that he is not anywhere nearly as old as Burling or Sybil. Eric responds with, He could have kept her on instead of throwing her out. I call it tough luck." Note the contrast of Eric's opinion. This is important as it foreshadows later tension. Burling responds with, "Rubbish. If you don't come down sharply on some of these people, they'd soon be asking for the earth." Note his derogatory tone, achieved through the exclamation of "rubbish" and also "these people." We can see the gap between Burling and the workers, and he acts somewhat of a snob in this section. Gerald responds wholeheartedly with, "I should say so." Note the inspector at the end saying, "They might, but after all, it's better to ask for the earth than to take it." Here again the inspector is a mouthpiece for Priestley's own views. We can see the juxtaposition of the characters and the theme of capitalism versus socialism. Note how Burling attempts to intimidate the inspector through the stage directions, staring at the inspector. "What did you say your name was?" "Inspector." Here we can see through these stage directions that he dislikes being challenged. However, the inspector is unfazed, responding "Goole," Goole. Note again the intimidation tactic. "How do you get on with our chief constable, Colonel Roberts?" Here we can see him name dropping, and we can see the attitude of the wealthy. They think that their money and status solves all.